Today we've got Dr. Taddy Blecher, and what a privilege and what an honor to have him on. His time is as precious as gold because this man is changing the world through entrepreneurship and especially social entrepreneurship. I've had the privilege of getting to know his mom over many years, about I think 15 years at least. And so she's managed to arrange this podcast with someone who knows the who's who, who's committed to uplifting and transforming this nation, I think Africa and the world, with regards to development in people's education. Welcome to the show, Dr. Taddy Blecher.
Thank you very much, Steve. I appreciate it.
He's the CEO of the Maharishi Invincibility Institute, which is an educational institute. He's the co-founder of the Transcendental of Entrepreneurship. He's got so many awards and so many areas of influence. I'm going to let him tell us a little bit about your story. Dr. Taddy, and I refer you to as Dr. Taddy because I know that you know your Latin well, and it comes from, I think, doctere, which means teacher. So Teacher Taddy, tell us your story in education and how you're changing this nation.
Thanks a lot, Steve. Well, I feel very fortunate every single day to be doing this kind of work, and am passionate about changing the future of South Africa. And I think the common ingredient to change everything in any country in the world, or for the world as a whole, is human beings, because ultimately we each contribute every single day to what happens in the environment, in society, safety, economic well-being, happiness, fulfillment of everybody, and so on. So if human beings are the unit that really matter, then the mechanism that we have to develop those human beings is education in its broadest terms. And obviously we have formalized education, but every day, every moment, we're all learning as human beings. We like alive and learning and awake and so on. So really teaching people to develop their full potential is, in my view, at the center of changing the future of society. And it might seem like a long route, but actually it's the only true sustainable route, because what society becomes ultimately will depend on the 56, 57 million people in this country and the 1 billion people or whatever across Africa, and how we use our hearts and minds and align those to bring powerful change in the world. So in brief, I'm an actuary by background. I've got 4 educational qualifications post-school. I later on got 2 honorary doctorates for the work I've done. And when I was 27 years old, I was about to immigrate. I'd been working as an actuary and a management consultant for a global consulting firm called Monitor. I was doing well. I was earning 1.3 million rand a year, which is not bad for a 27-year-old. And I could travel, I could do whatever I wanted, and I was very happy and all of that. And I was about to go off to the States. I was literally 2 weeks away from getting on the plane. I had 43 boxes. You said you know my mom well, and she loves you very much, and you've helped her a lot over the years. And so literally I put 43 boxes of stuff into my mom's cellar, and bought my air ticket, was about to get on the plane, and then 2 weeks before leaving, I decided, stop the bus, I want to stay in South Africa and make a difference. And I thought I might do it for a month or two. I've now done it for 25 years. I'm 53. Wow. I've devoted my life to working on developing youth and their full potential. That I feel is my highest purpose and my personal passion. And we set out to do something that most people think is impossible. We set out to prove that the most disadvantaged, the most marginalized kids, so that could be, kids in orphanages, safe houses, refugees, asylum seekers, street kids, people that really are suffering in our society, women with young children and no breadwinner, and what we would call needs, not in education, employment, or training, and there are millions and millions of such people in the country. And could we help those people become the leaders of South African society through getting a great education, really helping them switch on, wake up, develop their full potential, and then become just, very successful through their own merit in South Africa's economy. And in the process, we've now created 6 free universities or post-secondary institutions, including the Branson Center of Entrepreneurship with Sir Richard Branson, which is now opened in various countries in the world. And it's been an incredible journey, and we've educated over 22,000 unemployed youth. We've put over 19,000 of those youth, about 19,073 that we've recorded on a major database of jobs that we've placed them into. 5,000 of them are entrepreneurs, and if you leave out the entrepreneurs, just the people that we've placed into jobs, they earn, at the time we place them into a job, the salary then, if you add them all together, is 1.45 billion rand. So today they're probably earning about 3 billion rand per year combined. And we estimate they'll earn over 41.85 billion in their working careers. So many, many billions going back into the hands of people who were on the streets, in all those kinds of difficult situations, stuck, not able to go into public universities, private universities, not having the money. And many are dealing with huge emotional disadvantage, not just educational disadvantage and financial disadvantage. And so we see it's completely possible to take somebody who today you could say is a broken person, anger, depression, fear, anxiety, uncontrolled emotions, etc., and help those individuals intellectually, emotionally, spiritually, physically, on all levels. And for us, it's about holistic education. So that's the final thing I'll say, which is getting back to this core purpose of developing human beings to ultimately change society and help them develop their full potential. For us, education cannot only be about the intellect. When you and I went to school, it was just the intellect. It's get your textbooks, underline your notes with a highlighter, walk around the garden or the street, memorize the stuff, go and regurgitate it. And we thought that was education. And actually, a human being has a heart, a mind, an ego, feelings, a soul, consciousness, a physical body. They have the environment around them, etc. And ultimately, all of these things have to be healthy and in alignment and developed. And education, in its purest form, should develop all of that. So we use an approach. We call it inside-out education, not outside-in education. Inside out, it's from the inside of the person. And actually the word educare, like you were talking about Latin, so actually in Greek is to lead out. It's to bring the genius out of a person, not to shove a whole lot of facts and data and stuff into a person's head. Yeah. A human being is much, much more infinite than that and much greater than that. And this approach we call consciousness-based education and that comes to the name of our institution called the Maharishi Institute. And Maharishi was a great saint who came out of India and who brought Transcendental meditation that many people know. And, he worked with people like the Beatles and all kinds of many of the world's greatest celebrities, practiced TM and so on. But he developed this concept of education that would develop the brain at the deepest level and would create all these kind of neuronal pathways, wake them up in the brain, and really increase IQ and creativity and problem-solving ability in the process. And that's really this approach at the center of what we do. And we're completely passionate about this because I have seen thousands and thousands of miracles. I mean, I've seen actually over 19,000 miracles because every one of these kids is a miracle. It's an absolute miracle to take a broken loser out of society and then 10 years later, this person's earning R1 million a year. I mean, we've got a graduate who was a street kid who earns 4 million rand a year now. He's a top investment banker. And we've got so many thousands of these stories, and we think it's impossible. We think this person for the rest of their life is going to be begging on the side of the road. That person's just as great as you or I, but could they go through the right kind of educational process?
Wow, Dr. Teddy, I am so emotional because I wish that little prelude that you've given us could be on national TV 24/7 because that's what we need to hear. And in this season of C19, there's just a negative atmosphere. There are so many people suffering from anxiety and depression and fear and lack of hope and despair. And to hear this testimonies of 25 years, I think every South African needs to hear that. And so I'm going to do my best to come alongside you and try and get this trumpet call out to South Africa.
Okay.
to let them know that, hang on, there are people, there are organizations, there are people funding these organizations to see people's lives transformed. And so thank you for that calling. Thank you that you stuck around. And thank you that we get to meet eventually, because I do want to just ask you, my 16-year-old son, and I'm going to have my own personal story here, is a true entrepreneur. He's had 3 businesses already. He started income earning already on the internet. He is at a private school, but does he have the opportunity, or do other children going to other high schools, not so disadvantaged, do they have an opportunity to plug into the Transcendental Institute or the Maharishi Invincibility Institute? Is it open to everyone, and what is your process?
So Steve, we don't select people based on race or religion or culture or gender or anything else. In fact, we do try to take like about 70% women, because many of the women we take have been abused. They've got little children, and there's research that shows if you can educate a woman who's unemployed and get her into a quality job, then 7 generations that follow her will, have come out of poverty, will be in the middle class, and really that woman is going to bring up a whole new, set of generations of new leaders. And so people can apply, and we have a pretty open access system, because again, we don't believe matric means that much. I mean, so whether you've got a matric or not, and whether you've got a good matric or not, it's a nice to have, but again, it's such a partial form of education that to exclude people who don't have a good matric, that's actually a tragedy. And so we do try to open up a lot more widely. And so we are available to people of all backgrounds in South Africa. And from Africa, we've got students from 17 countries across Africa. It's our dream to open up all across South Africa. We're currently in Johannesburg, Cape Town, Durban, in Mpumalanga, but we're also now working on creating like a Pan-African online university college, and then creating like franchises across Africa, but all focused on non-profit, working with people who are otherwise excluded. And your son sounds amazing, because if he's only 16 and he's already building 3 businesses, this is what you want. This is how society, this is the joy of life, and we're going to talk a lot more about entrepreneurship. But I always say, you can tell an entrepreneur, you just look in a person's eyes and you can see, like, entrepreneurs, their eyes are alight. There's just so much going on. They want to get you into a dark corner and just start telling you stuff because they're passionate about it, and they're committed, and they're convinced, and they're believers in what they're doing, and they're alive. And this is an extraordinary thing about entrepreneurs, is they're people who are incredibly alive, even though their journey might be, absolutely tough. It isn't easy being an entrepreneur. Some people have it easier or whatever, but often the best entrepreneurs come out of great hardship. But it's that ultimately, at the end of the day, it's that passion for life. It's excitement for changing the status quo, proving something is possible, getting other people to believe in a vision, etc. So if your son's starting at such a young age, you really, really are very blessed, and you must have done a lot right.
Well, how do people get involved, and at what age do you take people in? Is this sort of a high school, process? Is this a post-high school? Is it any age? And is there a curriculum? And what website do they go to find more information?
Okay, so this is post-secondary. They can go to the MaharishiInstitute.org website, and I can send you those details. And we're just actually rebuilding our website, so it's going to be a lot more comprehensive. And actually, our last website got hacked, which we had up for about 12 years. Okay. And so now we're doing a much better website now. So we've just got a splash page at the moment. And anyone can be in touch with me, and I'll put them in touch with the admissions office. They would come to an open day. So we take students like anything from 17 years old up until, I always say, 117, because no one is too old to study. So we've got some students like actually in their 50s, because of apartheid, they couldn't get to go to university. They've always dreamed of it. Like, there's a guy who sits next to me in the office next to me. He's a student, but he's like 58. He's got like 8 grandchildren.
Wow.
And you know, he's going through a degree with us, and incredible guy called James. So yeah, people could be of any age, and everybody can apply for a bursary. And so we look at a person's situation, and if you get a bursary, and the majority of our students get bursaries, then they only pay 200 Rand per month, and they get 10 hours per day of education, all books and materials, they get files for every course, access to internet, 100 megabits per second dedicated lines that we've got, you know, over like 700 computers, library, huge databases that they can access, and so many online learning courses, and all of this stuff. But it starts with coming to an open day, and then we just want students to see, do they like our approach to education? Because it's pretty full on. It's like a long day every day, but we provide food. And most importantly, you know, we start every day with yoga, with breathing exercises, with transcendental meditation, with rest. You know, we're doing a lot of these types of things. And so most people love it, but you get people that hate it. So we need people to come to an open day, have an experience of what we do, and then say, this is not for me, or this is for me, because it's a very different approach to education, this kind of inside-out approach. And it's really this journey to become your full self. And that's really what it is. It's a journey of total transformation. And we feel we failed. If you come through our institution and you don't feel that this has totally transformed your life, we would give you your money back if you had paid anything, but you haven't really, so we can't do that. But then we failed. And so we want every single student to be able to come through and say, my life is utterly changed now and forevermore because I've been through this institution. I've woken up. I know who I am. I'm alive. I'm awake. I've found my life purpose. Nothing can stop me. I'm equipped. I'm skilled. I'm competent. I'm a 21st century citizen. I can think. I can create. I can work with others. You know, I've got the drive. I've got the values. This is what, you know, a graduate must come out with, those attributes.
When you say a graduate, is it a degree process in entrepreneurship?
It's a degree program. It's a degree program, but we do have some programs where you don't need to do a degree, where you can, for example, we've got an incredible cybersecurity academy program with ABSA and other IT programs where you don't have to do a degree, but you can get phenomenal jobs, you know, in industry.
Okay, so is it a social entrepreneur degree, or what do you call the degree? How do you refer to it?
Okay, so the underlying business degree is a Bachelor of Business Administration degree. And then we have, for us, that is like, our logo is actually a tree. And for us, like the sap of the tree is like really the development of consciousness and the inner person. The roots of the tree are like your quantitative methods like mathematics, statistics. It's your language skills, literacy, you know, comprehension, reading ability, etc. It's your digital skills, so understanding IoT, cybersecurity, you know, like how to use technology, you know, etc. Produce a website, all of that. That's like the roots of a tree. Then the tree trunk for us is the management and entrepreneurship stream that everybody goes through. It's understanding how to create things, work with people, work with finances, work with strategy, work with operations, logistics, supply chains, you know, all of that. But then the branches of the tree is really where the fruits and flowers come that everybody wants. And that's our industry verticals, where you can go into insurance and do insurance industry compliance exams like FASE and do insurance qualifications alongside your degree. You can go into the digital verticals and do like nano degrees in digital areas and get incredible jobs in those kind of spaces. You can go into finance and become like a stockbroker, portfolio manager, investment banker, you know, that type of thing. You can go into entrepreneurship, like, you know, as a pure field. So you can go into sustainability and the nature conservation and, you know, green industries, etc. So that's basically the model. It's like this tree, to create this incredibly strong tree that comes from just a little seed. So we see like a student as like a little seed that within it contains this giant tree, and our job is to help water, nourish, nutrition, fertilize the soil, so this incredible strong tree that everybody can come and eat the fruit from, give shade to everybody, and then lots of trees like that, and we create a whole forest, and that's how we change society. On that level, through creating leaders, but then also there's an incredible theory in consciousness that I'm sure you've come across that really changed my life when I came across it, and it's this idea, it's in quantum physics, this idea that actually at the deepest level of life, we're all connected in this kind of quantum field or kind of quantum soup, and you could call it consciousness, you could call it God, you could call it many different names. Yeah, but yeah, entanglement. So basically quantum entanglement. And so if you can get groups of people raising consciousness at that level, at that deepest level of the mind and of life and of matter itself, then you can start to change the way everybody in society starts to think. So somebody's about to kill somebody's not going to, somebody who's about to eat something really bad for them, just has got enough inner awakening to just know, look, that's going to destroy my body. Why would I want to do that, to myself? And so those millions of decisions that people make every day just start to change because there's this tipping point and this kind of wakefulness, this inner wakefulness. So this kind of quantum theory and Maharishi, like this effect has been named after Maharishi, called the Maharishi effect, which is kind of a quantum field theory around when you create large enough groups of people enlivening consciousness and meditating together in advanced programs, you start to change society. It's almost like an atom bomb of love at the deepest level of society, that while individuals are growing their IQ and sleeping better at night and becoming more creative and more cultured and refined and happier and fulfilled and all these beautiful things that affect education and career and life and family structure and community, at the same time you're transforming society at this deepest level where there's so much collective stress. You were talking about during C19, this just pool of just depression and anxiety and worry and doubt. And whereas you can tip that at this deepest level of consciousness. So that's a side effect, I would say, of what we're doing. And our ultimate goal is to really transform society through raising consciousness and creating these much more enlightened leaders, a new generation of leaders that can take society forward with ethics and values and so on.
Wow, that's incredible. So an analogy of the institution as a tree, and then the entrepreneur being a tree himself, rooted in all these skills and intellect, and having fruit that people can come pick off as he influences, and how the trees communicate with one another. It reminds me of that New York Times bestseller, The Hidden Life of Trees, and how they communicate together and how they connect together by the quantum field. And so you're building trees within people's lives, and so well done to you.
That's it.
But tell me, is an entrepreneur from nature or from nurture? Is it nurtured as you grow?
It's a brilliant question. And Steve, actually, I'm very fortunate to be chairing an initiative that I've helped to develop for the National South African School System. It's called Ecubed, which stands for Entrepreneurship, which is entrepreneurship and social entrepreneurship. Employability, that's the second E, and then education is the third E. So really what our goal is, we've got two goals in this Ecubed initiative, and it's a system-wide initiative that's being implemented with the Department of Basic Education for the whole country, and it's an initiative up until 2030. So we've set ourselves a 13-year task starting in 2017. We did, a lot of research from 2011 onwards, consulted very deeply with the Minister of Education, the Director General, who's a really great man, and the Council of Education Ministers, etc. Our team did research on over 50 countries around the world, etc., on putting entrepreneurship into education, which is going to get on to answering your question about is it nature or nurture. And ultimately what we want to do is to make school so alive and so much more interesting and exciting for young people that 100% of learners choose to finish school rather than dropping out. And then when they finish school, that 100% of learners either go on to study further or to get a job and have the skills to do so, or to start their own business now or in the future. And of course, we know the best entrepreneurs usually emerge in their late 20s, in their 30s, 40s, even in their 50s. It's never too late to be an entrepreneur. And why is that important to put into the school system and to start young? And it comes to your point. Why do you see, I'm assuming, are you Greek by background? I'm Jewish. And, you look at the Greeks, you look at the Jews, you look at even the Indian communities. There's certain communities where at the dinner table, everybody's building businesses. It's just how people grow up. They go and sit in their father's shop. They go and see the great things that their uncle's doing, etc. And entrepreneurship is just a way of life. It's a fancy word. It's a fancy word for a very, very simple thing, which is just find a need that people have got and fulfill that need. And it really comes to loving other people and caring about other people and wanting to help other people. And then you charge a fair price for your services. And because you're doing it with integrity and there's a real value for that service, people are going to be able to pay for that thing. And entrepreneurs are the people who do make societies great economically and create jobs for everybody and opportunities for everybody. But it's yes, people might have a naturally more entrepreneurial bent. Some people are just naturally more risk averse and more conservative. Other people, are just more comfortable with risk and failing and etc. And maybe it comes from, like maybe in the Greek community, every day your mother tells you how great you are, eat your lunch because you're going to be the strongest person, study hard at school because you're going to be top of your class. And so you kind of learn you kind of can't fail. And even if you fail, somebody's going to love you, just indisputably. And I got that from my mother. I think my mom brought up people that have got tremendous self-confidence and so on, because she just believed in us through thick and thin, no matter what. She believed that we could grow up and become great people. And she told us that. And we knew that all the time. And so for me to become a social entrepreneur, I was an actuary. That's the most boring career in the whole world, working in pensions and life insurance. And it's all, calculating when people are going to die and then how do you make money out of that and, and so on. And, when I became an entrepreneur, I didn't even know the word social entrepreneurship existed. But I just got into it like a duck to water. It was just so natural to life. There's so many entrepreneurs in our community. It's just every second person's an entrepreneur. And so you're just used to it. And now, but in many communities, and apartheid, I think to a great degree, destroyed entrepreneurship. And what entrepreneurship really became in South Africa was really survivalist entrepreneurship, which was just, we're starving to death, so we're going to go sell tomatoes on the side of the road, or we're going to sell socks, or we'll start up a spaza shop if we're lucky enough or something like that. But real entrepreneurship and big scale, there's all kinds of titles, gazelles and this, and everyone's trying to become a unicorn and build $1 billion company and all of these kind of things. That kind of thing isn't survivalist. That is some kind of crazy lunatic who is absolutely alight or on fire about some kind of idea that he thinks or she thinks is going to change the world. And unfortunately, apartheid knocked out of people that idea that you could be great, that you could achieve anything amazing. It told you were useless and second rate, and it was so drummed into your head that because of the color of your skin and so on, you'd never be anybody. And all these university careers were closed off to people. So Black people, so much to a great degree, thought I can only become a teacher, I could become a policeman. There were very, very limited careers. And in the Black community, if you became an entrepreneur, you were considered a loser. You were considered like a total failure, that you couldn't do anything else. And this is something we have to radically change. And so, yes, while some people might naturally have a bent in that direction, and some people grow up in those kind of families where they're more exposed to it, tens of millions of people in this country have grown up not seeing it. They don't really know what it is. People tell them it's not a good thing. And they'd much rather just go to university and become an accountant and get a job and earn a good salary and be risk averse. And this we have to change. And this is why we're starting it at a young age. But the other interesting thing, though, Steve, is that research that we've done is showing that in the 21st century now, and in this fourth industrial revolution, jobs as we know it, they no longer really exist or are going to exist. And COVID has probably changed everything forever now for the future. You know, people working from home, telecommuting, using technology, things are never going to be the same again. They're never going to be the same again. And to go get a job for 40 years in a bank, you know, it just generally isn't going to happen. And if you want to maintain that job in a bank, that bank's going to be disrupted by a fintech institution, by a little startup. And if you want your bank to survive, you better be heck of entrepreneurial just to maintain your job. And so all the research is showing that the very same qualities that you need to be a great entrepreneur today, or just an entrepreneur, are the same qualities you will need in the 21st century right now to get a job and to hold down that job. So if you want to go work in a bank or in government or anywhere else, really, you know, as those things get disrupted, you had better be entrepreneurial. So we better develop those skills in everybody and start from a young age: creativity, risk-taking, problem-solving, thinking out of the box, working with other people, you know, taking risks, etc. If we want to have an economy, if people want to have any form of employment, we have to develop more of this type of thinking. It's a mindset.
Great. There's a lot of knowledge and insight there. And I think it's encouraging to me because the way I see it is big business is just getting bigger. You know, 30 years ago, you had the small little pharmacy at the shopping center, the individual. Yes. Now it's just a chain of pharmacies. You used to have the small, exactly. You used to have the small little bottle store, the individual who was behind the counter, making it happen, adapting, evolving. Now it's big business. So to hear those stats is encouraging. And to look at those skills that you're trying to develop is, you know, it encourages me because I think the future of an economy, like you said, is in the entrepreneurs. But it seems like it's getting more difficult to break the barrier in an economy as an entrepreneur because the big boys are just getting stronger. The big companies and multinationals are getting bigger with more finance, with deep pockets. Tell us about the future in the next 10, 15 years. Are we going to see more smaller businesses, or are we going to see the big boys and the big multinationals even stronger?
Okay, so I think it's a very wonderful question and it's an exciting answer, which is firstly to say, and this statistic might shock you, but what percentage of all people who work in South Africa in the formal sector, and I'm not talking the informal sector, what percentage of people in the formal sector, that's about 16 million people who work in a job, that might have reduced to about 13 million now because of COVID. What percentage of those people do you believe work in a small business of less than 50 people in size, or a small NGO or something like that, versus in a larger organization, 51 people plus? Just take a guess.
Probably 40%.
70%.
Wow.
70% of South Africans feeding their family in the formal sector are in a small organization with less than 50 staff. In fact, it's a statistic most people don't realize, and I'll tell you that in Nigeria that figure's over 90%, in Kenya over 90%, in China that figure is 90%, and so all over the world, even the United States, the backbone of every economy is small business. People don't realize this, but they're small businesses who often become specialists. They don't need to employ 100 people or X many people, whatever it is that they do, but they specialize in that thing. They've built up expertise, and that is the backbone. And then all these big businesses hire all those small businesses to do this, to do that, to engrave this, to design that, to write this piece of code, to do X, Y, Z, and so on. So in South Africa, it's 70% without the informal sector. Now, we know that millions of people work in the informal sector in our country. We don't even know the numbers because it's informal. So those are not registered businesses with CIPC. We just know that there's millions of them. Formally registered with CIPC, I think, is about 1.5 million businesses. But the estimate is that there's 6 million businesses in this country. So that about 4.5 million businesses in this country are not registered. And so nobody knows how many there are or how many people are in that. But the estimate is that 90% plus of all people feeding their families in South Africa are doing it by way of a small business, either in the formal sector of the economy or in the informal sector. This is the backbone of the economy. If we want to create jobs in South Africa, forget big business. That's a key message. You have to forget big business when you're thinking about creating jobs. We have to nurture and treasure small business. So to come to the second part of your question is, it seems like the rich are getting richer. Is that true? Hell yes. It's absolutely true. It's ridiculous. I mean, you look during COVID, which is one of the worst economic crises of all times. I mean, the South African economy last quarter shrunk by over 50% annualized. The American economy was hammered. I mean, they've never seen anything like it since the war. But look at the rich in America. I mean, Elon Musk like a year ago was $18 billion, his net worth. At the peak now during this COVID crisis, and I think he's just back up to it again, $83 billion. That's a South African who in a year has gone from 18 to $83 billion. In one day when his share price fell, he lost, I don't know, it was close to $20 billion in one day. It was the biggest loss of any individual in one day in history. But how is it possible that one little guy from Pretoria Boys High, now could be worth over $80 billion? I mean, that's over R1 trillion. It's mind-blowing. That's almost as big as the whole South African economy per year, and that's one individual. So here's the statistic, which is horrifying. The eight richest people in the world, and they're all men, their wealth is considerably more combined than half of all of humanity. So there are 7.7 billion people in the world. So if you halve that, that's like, say, 3.9 billion people. So imagine 8 people. You could put them in one little room. You could put them in a bathroom. That's how small 8 people is. Just imagine 3.9 billion people. You couldn't fit them in a continent. You'd have to fit them on 3 continents and they'd be squashed.
Yeah.
And they don't have nearly the wealth of 8 people. So inequality is massively rising. And it's massively rising because for the first time in history, companies and individuals, and a lot of these people, and they call it now the talent economy. And that's why talent is so critical. And that's why our current system of the development of talent is so unequal. Because if somebody grows up and they've got the right stimulus for talent development, and it really develops their inner potential, these people can become richer than any kings or queens or lords or anything of old. And it isn't right. I mean, a guy like Jeff Bezos, great to have a fellow Greek that you can go and get some money from. He's not nearly philanthropic enough. His wife is actually, who's just divorced, a lot more philanthropic than he is. And yet you look at that guy, because of this mechanism of the internet that allows billions of people to connect, all of a sudden your customers, like in the old day, if you started a Greek fish shop or you started a cafe down the road or something like our grandparents all did, and things like that, who were their customers? It was the people in the neighborhood. They would walk there after school, they would go there after work, they'd go and buy, Coke, something like that. But now your customers are not the people in your little neighborhood. Your customers can be the entire world. And now people like Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos and Facebook, Mark Zuckerberg, I mean, they're working to connect everybody in their whole world. So even if you're sitting at the top of the Himalayas, you'll be able to get satellite-based internet at high speed, 100 megabits per second, wherever you are in the world. Of course, it's going to fry people, the electromagnetic radiation and all the stuff that we're doing. But the reality is that the whole world's getting connected. And so what happens is you get these platforms that become killer platforms that become very hard for the small entrepreneur to compete with. And so if you're Google, it's almost impossible to create a search engine that can compete with Google, or with Amazon if you're selling products online in the United States, or with any of these things, WeChat in China, or there's a bunch of them, Uber. I mean, Lyft is doing a good job, Bolt is doing a good job. But you get these dominant brands. You might get 1, 2, or 3 of them, and then it's very hard to compete in that segment. And that's why, but it doesn't mean that the small entrepreneur. So, I think the third part of this question is actually there's never been a better time to be an entrepreneur, because now a little guy sitting at home, even on your cell phone, you could develop an app. You can develop, if I look at Apple, for example, which is the biggest app ecosystem in the world, there's over 20 million app developers for Apple. Some of those are little old ladies who decided they wanted to develop an app and now make millions of dollars. You get I think the youngest app developers are 12 years old, 8 years old. You could be any age. You just need a device. You can develop an app, or you can come up with a product, and you don't have to sell it to the people down your neighborhood. Now you can find a great market in Uzbekistan for whatever reason, or in Guatemala, so you could find, your 16-year-old son could find a great market in Guatemala. He never has to travel there, and he could sell whatever he likes to anybody in the whole world. So it's actually never been easier to be an entrepreneur. Of course, you get these big platform plays, but then there's, think of a platform like a coral reef. Then there's lots of space for fish to swim around and little schools of fish. So you can, within the Google ecosystem, create 1 million businesses. Within the Apple ecosystem, you can create 1 million businesses. So there's opportunity everywhere. It's always going to come back to human potential. How is that human potential developed? And are people using their creativity, their brains, their genius, and so on?
Sounds good, Dr. Taddy. Tell us about South Africa in terms of entrepreneurship, stacking against the rest of the world and our innovation here. Are we at the top of the pile, or we're at the bottom?
Okay. Look, I love this country with my whole heart, and we do have a history. And I will say we're not at the top of the pile. We're not at the middle of the pile. We're not near the bottom of the pile. We're kind of at the bottom of the pile when it comes to entrepreneurship. And those statistics you can look at, for example, through the Global Entrepreneurship Monitor, brought out by the London Business School in South Africa. It's done by the University of Cape Town together with LBS, but it's done, in over 80 countries in the world. And there's different indicators to measure the levels of entrepreneurship in the country. A first indicator is called the T index, which is total entrepreneurship activity. And they look at the number of new startups that you get in a country. Obviously, they can only work based on the formalized sector, so they have to look at CIPC records, etc. They can do some informal research around the informal sector, but it's hard to gauge exactly what that is. And then they'll compare that between countries. That's the T index. And then they'll look at the new business survival rate, surviving 1 year. 3 years is a good benchmark, like how many businesses survive beyond 3 years. And in our T index in South Africa, we generally are never more than between 7% and about 11%. Probably the best we've ever been is 12%. That would mean 12% of our adult population engaged in building new businesses. Whereas in many developed countries in the world, that figure's as high as 20%, 30%, can go as high as 40%. Where a country, it's just the nature of people to be building businesses. Everybody's doing it. Old people are doing it. Young people are doing it. It's a cultural thing. It's how people, express themselves, express what they love and passionate about. It's not tabooed by society, by the people that you respect and care for. You see it all around you. But what's even more worrying is the survival rate. And this is what comes into how robust is the basic education that people are getting, the fundamental skills, as well as the entrepreneurial education people are getting as they grow up. And that requires savvy, and it requires, there's a basic amount of maths ability and communication ability and digital ability that you need to run a successful business in the world today. You're doing a podcast here. There's all kinds of aspects of your business that require you to have a set of skills and resourcefulness and a base set of skills. And this is where you see when the rubber hits the road, because unfortunately we only have about a 2% business survival rate, which is second lowest in the world beyond 3 years. And so this means that millions of people have the idea, I want to start a business. They've got great intentions. They mean well. They might even have a wonderful idea or a wonderful product, but they can't kind of implement it. They can't actualize it. They can't get it to survive beyond that critical 3-year mark. Because once you can see a business surviving beyond 3 years, it's very likely it's going to survive 4 or 5 years. It's not guaranteed, but the likelihood of death at that point for a business is far lower than early in its stage. So it's, there's a very, very high kind of failure rate, and then it kind of, starts to go down a lot. And South Africa, unfortunately, as I say, is, second worst in the world in this regard. And it relates for me to a rote-based education system that doesn't teach you to take risk. That's why we've got to shake up the education system in South Africa. That's why I devote so much of my time on this Ecubed initiative to help transform our schools in South Africa, to help teach teachers how to teach in a certain way that's more play-based, more project-based, more game-based. There's a lot of methodology around this, and we've learned from some of the best countries in the world, the best experts in the world in this regard. We've done massive amounts of research. We partner with people like Lego. Lego's a major donor of ours in this work. And Lego are very smart because they understand that play, and look at the difference. I mean, look at kids growing up in more affluent communities. They grow up with Lego, for example, as a tool, which just every day you're building things, you're breaking them down, you're creating them. What is that? That's the basis of entrepreneurship. It's how do you put pieces of a puzzle together? How do you, that puzzle fails, you didn't make the bridge, you couldn't make the car, the wheels didn't turn, you break it, you fix it, you iterate. It's a mindset, and it's a method of learned behavior that you have to experience hundreds of times, thousands of times. And then it's just so intuitive. If something fails, you don't panic. It's not like the end of the world, things like that. Whereas unfortunately, in our mass communities, there's so much stigma around failure because you thought people have got low self-esteem. And so when you've got low self-esteem, you can't afford to fail. Yeah. Whereas if you grow up as a little Greek prince or princess, or a little Jewish prince or princess, so what if you fail? You're still great. Like whatever you do, you're great. And so that kind of mindset, we do have to change.
Yeah, I mean, it's your identity that is not rooted in success. It's an identity in who you are and your character and the influence that you call to in this world. And that's what you're trying to imbue in a lot of people's lives there, to be that tree.
That's right.
To be rooted.
That's right.
Yeah, to be rooted and then present your fruit to the world so that people can, come and eat off it and get transformed. It's incredible. So that's where South Africa. Yeah, go for it.
Yes. Steve, I just want to say, to answer your question of, is South Africa going to make it, and how do we stack up against other countries in the world? Yes, that's a macro globular figure I gave you. But the other side of the equation, which tells me it's possible, is that we have produced the Elon Musks of the world, and we do. And I'll tell you some extraordinary statistics. I mean, you look at, of course, Discovery, Adrian Gore, and you look at Nando's, Bobby, what's his name? I know him so well. He'll kill me. Don't let him listen to your podcast because he's a friend. But Robbie Brosen, of course. Yes. And but you take, Donnie Gordon, who founded Liberty. These are all world-class entrepreneurs, world-class. Discovery's gone global. There's so many examples. So firstly, we see it is possible. And then I'll tell you an extraordinary statistic. Now, this statistic's from about 10 years ago, but I don't think it's changed that much. But they did a study of the Fortune 500 in the US and in the UK. So the 500 biggest businesses in the United States and the 500 biggest businesses in the United Kingdom. And what they found is that the CEO of those companies, that either they were going to be American or British, if it was in America or Britain, or South African. That in fact, the biggest number of CEOs in America who are not American are South African. The biggest number of CEOs in Britain who are not British are South African. South Africa produces extraordinary leaders, extraordinary managers, extraordinary entrepreneurs, incredible visionaries. There is so much that, also our struggles and our survival and our legacy can actually lead to creating, because hardship can create great entrepreneurs, but we've just got to create, a paradigm shift in mindsets. We've got to make this all okay, and that this is something actually noble to do and worthy of respect. And we've got to train people from a young age, and we've got to create every kind of stimulation opportunities we can. But what we know is that South Africa has the seeds of greatness when it comes to entrepreneurship. And so it's how do we expand that?
Incredible. And I think that's just what we need to hear. we're possibly at the bottom of the pile, but there are a lot of seeds, and maybe the grassroots level work that you're doing is going to just bear much fruit, and it has already with the numbers that you've shared. So well done to you. I'm a biohacker building this Made to Thrive business, and biohacking is one of the principles there, which is the art and science of, adapting and assessing your internal environment with your body and your external environment to optimize your mind and your body and your soul, which it seems what you're doing at the Maharishi Invincibility Institute. I've got my daughter who's 4 years old in an infrared sauna that's electromagnetic free. She's in there 4 or 5 times a week. I've got my son who's got a meditation app, and he's got a muse that sits on his head. But tell us, where do you think, in terms of optimizing someone's mind to develop those skills that you were speaking about? You spoke about yoga, breath work. What else are you using personally, and what else are you using within all these institutions?
Beautiful. So thank you for asking that. So Steve, the thing that I've learned a lot about, so I can't say that I'm an expert in every field of human development, but the thing that totally changed my life, and I've now seen it change over 30,000 youth's lives, because not only on the university side, I've worked firsthand personally with over 10,000 youth in schools as well. So I've seen over 30,000 people's lives like that change. Through the use of this technique called Transcendental meditation. And, TM is a technique that was brought out in the 1950s out of India by Maharishi Mahesh Yogi. In its early days, people, used to think this is all like touchy-feely stuff. You're just going to meditate, you're going to chill out, you're going to zone out. And in those early days, it was all the drug addicts and everybody who wanted to meditate and go follow Maharishi and things like that. And of course, people like the Beatles that I mentioned earlier and so on. But Maharishi himself was a scientist, and he studied science at the University of Allahabad in India. And he then found, this just incredible enlightened teacher, Brahmananda Saraswati, and learned under him, and then spent time in the Himalayas, became completely enlightened, and brought this methodology out into the world. And as a scientist by background, he always said that spirituality means nothing if it can't be scientifically validated, and that all this mood making stuff is just, it's nice, you might feel good, but it isn't real. It's not, if something's not as real as touching this table in front of me, or or something like that, then it's just it's just a nice to have. It's, and so what he started encouraging as early as the 1960s and 1970s, and this has really accelerated in the last 2 decades, is that there are thousands of scientific studies now that have been done on meditation in general, and I would say well over 600 peer-reviewed, randomized controlled trial, properly done, scientific studies and scientific experiments done on transcendental meditation, comparing it with other forms of mindfulness and other types of concentration meditation and contemplation, and so on. And what these research studies show is that overwhelmingly, and all kinds of meta-analyses and so on, is that if a person can experience their own quieter state of the mind, or pure consciousness, as it's called, or being, you could use the word being, and we're called human beings. And it's interesting that we're human beings and not human doings or human knowings or human thinkings. And so our basis, even in the name of our species, is being. And so that if a human being can settle their mind down and experience this kind of more quiet state of being, or pure consciousness, where the mind is not just continually frenetic. It's like having a holiday from yourself, away from yourself, inside yourself, which you do twice a day for 20 minutes. There's no religion involved. There's no belief system. You don't have to believe in anything. You can sit there thinking this isn't going to work, and it is still going to work. But if you allow your mind to get that state of absolute silence, absolute unboundedness, no boundaries of thought, like just pure, pure consciousness, pure intelligence, that state in and of itself is pure bliss. It's just incredible happiness. And so the experience I have when I meditate every day, it's like being filled up with this like warm, beautiful liquid, and just feeling, this incredible unboundedness. And you just come out with into your day's activity with so much mental clarity, so much inner strength, so much kind of inner peace and inner integration, and so much like self-referral and intuition of what's the right way to go. It's like no problem that comes along is unsolvable. It's just like you just become so much, broader in your comprehension and your intellect and your integration of knowledge and fields and so on. And this has now been backed up so comprehensively by science that really, if somebody doesn't practice this kind of meditation, it's almost crazy. It's almost like you can't say you're a believer in science and not do something like this, because there's more research, for example, on TM than on Disprin or aspirin, to cure headaches. And yet, because it's so natural, and as a natural therapist and all of that, because, you don't buy it in a pill and you can't just pop that pill and things like that, then people think this thing's got to be worthless. But if you look at the science, and the mind can get the state of profound rest, then the body gets a state of profound rest. And what happens when you have profound rest? Like when you go on holiday and have the best holiday of your life, the best night's sleep of your life, the best run of your life, things like that. Your body just rejoices. It just starts to heal, and all the stresses start to drop off. So there's nothing voodoo, there's nothing mystical, there's nothing weird or wacky. It's just mind settles down, deep, profound state of rest. Body gets this deep, profound state of rest because the mind and body are best friends. They're completely integrated. And when the body gets this deep rest, then all the stress starts to be thrown off. All this rubbish that's in your system starts to go out, and all this healing starts to take place. So if there's one single recommendation that I can give, and everyone's got to find what's good for themselves, but I can tell you, I've seen firsthand, and I've seen it in my own life. I went from a very depressed teenager. I was at WITS, I was doing actual science, I was failing, I was getting drunk every night with my friends, I hated myself, I didn't know who I was lost, I had no vision, I didn't know where I was going. And after learning TM and practicing it for 2 years and doing the advanced TM city technique and so on, gosh, that was 29 years ago. I'm a 360-degree different person, 180-degree different person, because if I was 360 degree, I'd be back at the same point. And I'm not. I'm in the absolute opposite spectrum. I'm the happiest person in the world. I have infinite energy. I just feel so unbounded, so focused. Like it's like, on the one side, I have such a vision, but I feel so practical. Like I work 18 hours a day, 7 days a week. I've done it for, 25, 27 years. I don't get tired. I don't get depressed. I don't ever get angry. I don't ever feel lost. I just feel profound inner peace, and fulfillment, just excitement. Every day is such an exciting journey. When I experienced that myself, I thought, why can't everybody have this? Everybody can have this. Everybody should have it. Life is so beautiful. And it's just, in the Bible, it talks about the kingdom of heaven is within you. Jesus said the kingdom of heaven is within you. But where is this within you? How do you find it? What do you do? Must I go cut into my head with a teaspoon? Or like, where is this kingdom of heaven inside me? How are you going to find it? Am I going to get it at the bottom of a whiskey glass? Am I going to get it from drugs? Those methods are not going to bring sustainable kingdom of heaven. They're going to bring, a flash in the pan, and the next day you're going to feel a whole lot worse, and all of that. Whereas if you can build systematic techniques in your life and disciplines and routines and daily rituals that allow you to tap into your full potential, experience inner bliss, inner peace and silence, and so on. The change is profound. So I am ambassador for it. It has changed my life, and I've seen many, many thousands of people.
Great. And I think meditation is something that makes you thrive, that we really, just encourage for people to adopt, and a stillness. And, I think the different forms of it, do something that works really well with you, incorporate it with breath work if you have to, incorporate it with yoga if you have to, or stretching or Pilates, or whichever way that you actually feel that you can get into that very theta state or that meditative state, which I think is so profound.
Yeah.
I know you've touched on this as the last question coming here as we draw to the end of the show, but what I've realized over 22 years is many, many people put these habits and lifestyles in place for a short period of time. The research shows that 60 to 80% of people put back all the weight on that they've lost with a diet within 3 months.
Yes.
95% of people put the weight back on within 5 years. That's the data that's coming out. What are the key internal drivers for people to sustain their transformation?
It's such a great question, Steve. And the one thing, okay, is the irony. They call it the yoga of desperation. So I think when people hit rock bottom, often they're prepared to try something new, and then they'll have a breakthrough, and they'll commit to it because they know what suffering feels like. And like if you've ever been at that point where you've been suicidal or truly depressed or something like that, and you're fortunate enough to find the way for you, then often those people will have the drive to sustain it. And, what I would say is that it's all about the mind ultimately. The mind is the guide of our lives and our bodies, because we're not going to go for a jog without our mind saying go for a jog. We're not going to try and lose weight without our mind saying, you need to lose weight, things like that. So the mind is a very, very precious thing, but it's an intangible thing. You can't cut out a person's thoughts and put it under a microscope and then show it on a screen. It's a very personal inner world that's going on inside everybody, and so thoughts, feelings, emotions, all these things we were talking about, passion, love, creativity, anger, fear, leadership. These are all intangible things inside a human mind, and it's either like a broken record that's just continuously going over and over like a stuck record, or it's a mind that's like a laser beam that just pierces through anything and solves anything, and has got incredibly broad comprehension, incredible focus, and and so on. And so I think you've got to deal with the mind. And if you want to deal with the mind, the mind is an intangible thing. You need an intangible solution. And that is why I would endorse meditation, because it's you're talking about, it's a completely intangible thing that you're doing. It's an inner experience. It's an abstract experience, but it's completely concrete, because when you look at the scientific evidence of what's going on to heart rate, what's going on with plasma lactate in the bloodstream, what's going on with cortisol levels in the brain and serotonin levels increasing, and there's absolute hard physiological evidence that when your mind, which is completely intangible and can't be grabbed or anything like that, but when it starts to settle down and experience its own inner nature and the self, or whatever you want to call it, then these hard physical things change. So often people call these the soft skills, the touchy-feely, all of that. But I think what modern science really is showing is that the hard was actually the soft. And they talk about this in the Tao Te Ching, the hard is the soft and the soft is the hard. It is the intangible. If you can control the intangible, you can control all the tangible things in life. Everything you want: wealth, abundance, great relationships, great family, everything else. But then control the softest thing, which is the mind. Nothing is softer than thinking, and the most soft levels of thinking. And if you want to, that's it. And so it's kind of paradoxical. It's kind of ironic, but you want wealth, you want all these things, you want health, then start with the most intangible, abstract thing, which is your mind.
Incredible. Thank you so much. And it reminds me of the Nietzsche quote that says, "He who has a why can bear almost any how." And
Exactly.
Viktor Frankl, who's saying that, logotherapy and logo coaching, if you've got a purpose, if you've got a calling, you're going to sustain that meditation. You're going to sustain that TM
100%.
year in, year out. And so thank you so much for your calling. Thank you so much for your vision. It's been a privilege and honor. I'm excited. I'd love to speak to you every week, because just speaking to you excites me about this country. And I'd love to, we're going to get some show notes on that, and we're going to, put them below the episode and on YouTube, because I think if people can just see those stats, and say, hang on, actually, this is where we can go. This is where we are. It's not as so dire as we think it is. And there's significant opportunity in South Africa and Africa. And many Americans that I've spoken to that are well connected believe that this continent is a place for growth, is a place for entrepreneurship. So thank you so much, Dr.
The
Teddy.
land of milk and honey. It truly can be. And Steve, please share this podcast with my mom.
I will.
And she'll be delighted. She always says I never tell her when I ever do these kind of things. So if you can share it, will be wonderful. And just to say how much I love you, Mom, and I wouldn't do any of these things if it wasn't for you. So thank you, Steve.
Great. And this is SteveStavs on the Made to Thrive show, where we optimize your mind, your body, your soul, and your spirit so that you can thrive wherever you are. We are just so grateful to people like Dr. Taddy and the work that he's doing, and I'm sure we're going to connect again. So thank you so much.
Thanks a lot, Steve. Take care. Bye-bye.
Cool.